Enough about the World Match Play for now. We'll try to get a show out to you guys next week, maybe after the second round, mini episode to recap the first half of the tournament. And obviously after the tournament, we'll discuss Dave Chisnell's remarkable title. But let's look ahead to the one event on the calendar that I think everyone will agree is slightly more important than the World Match Play. That's the World Championships. Ticket sale is going to start in a few weeks, but not just that. There's one other announcement, and that's that the World Championships for 2024 will be sponsored by Paddy Power. What was your reaction to that news?
This was news that I saw drop yesterday morning, Monday morning, so when we're recording. So not something that I've got to say was on my radar, if I'm being honest. And that's because you go back to the start of 2022, Kazoo was announced as the new title sponsor of the World Championship in a multi-year deal. Well, this deal has lasted just 1 year. The PDC World Championship, it is their flagship event. Kazoo took over from William Hill. They'd been the sponsor for 8 years, an online car retailer. So it's the first time that we've not had a gambling sponsor for the tournament since 2002, so more than 20 years. But the Kazoo era, looks like we are moving away from the gambling sponsors that have backed a lot of the PDC's majors for the last 20, 25 years. It was seen as a very positive move. We've had My Diesel claim they took over the World Cup last month. We had a question from one of our listeners around that time talking about Kazoo and their finances maybe not being in the best position because they were sponsoring the World Cup, and I think we both said we don't know too much about the situation, but we do know that the PDC are going to be proactive. They are going to seek out new sponsors, and this is one of the new ones that's taken over from Kazoo, and it is a gambling sponsor. And if I was to say I'm thrilled about it, that might be a strong word to use, but as much as we love the darts, we're passionate about it, and this game, it doesn't quite stack up with other sports, does it? The individual sports like a tennis or a golf that can attract those big blue chip sponsors. Maybe one day darts will get there, but of course we'd love to see it happen one day. But in terms of getting a gambling sponsor back on board, I was looking at the reach that Paddy Power have got, and on Twitter 700,000 followers, Facebook 1.5 million likes. It's a huge audience that they've got, and fair to say not all of those people that have liked their Facebook page that follow them on Twitter are going to be into the darts. They're not going to know much about it. But for those 2 or 3 weeks during the World Championship, you've got to imagine their social media coverage is going to be plastered with things about the World Championship, about darts, which for me, that's got to be seen as a good thing. And that's not something that we could say about Kazoo, is it? Because based on their social media following, 42,000 Facebook likes, 25,000 followers on Twitter, that's quite a big improvement in that regard. So I know that's just one area of it. There's a lot that can be talked about in terms of, rightly or wrongly, if we should have gambling sponsors this involved in sport. But I think in terms of a marketing promotional side of things, Paddy Power, we've seen the announcement. As part of the announcement, they did the video with some of the players. They're going to come at it in their own unique way. They're going to have some fun with it. And I think we're going to see some entertaining content from it. We've seen Paddy Power. They've dipped their toe in the water a little bit with darts before. They sponsored the Champions League darts that was on the BBC for a couple of years, but taking over as title sponsor of the World Championship, that's a huge step into darts. And for me, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with it. They've definitely got my attention from a social media PR marketing perspective and how they promote and get involved in this tournament, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about this because as far as I'm concerned, it's really just they've announced a sponsor. The big part of it being Paddy Power is obviously now that they're going back to having gambling companies after the last couple of years that looked in the opposite direction. They were moving away from that with Kazoo as well as a couple others. And I would rather they didn't have gambling companies. I don't gamble on sports. I'm not opposed to people doing that, but I am to some extent opposed to having such unfettered advertising from those companies because it is an addictive crux and it can destroy people. And associating and having and giving that outpost for them to advertise. I just seem to I don't like that. Granted, I would have the same thing if it was sponsored by an alcohol company. I mean, I do drink, but I don't. I have problems with advertising something that can destroy not just your life but somebody else's, and therefore I don't necessarily. That's not even the right word. I don't like that they're the sponsor, but beyond that, that is what the PDC is doing. That not just the PDC, plenty of other sports entities. I mean, my favorite football club, Middlesbrough, had multiple different gambling companies as their shirt sponsor, and they're far from the only one. In fact, I can probably guess that more than half of the 92 clubs in the football league are, or at the very least have been, if not currently are, sponsored by either a gambling company or some country that doesn't respect human rights. So I'm not calling out the PDC for this. It's an overall problem in sport that I would rather see corrected. And I was happy that for a while the PDC were going in a different direction. But you can only go in that different direction if the finances are there, if there are enough companies willing to spend the money to sponsor your event. And it seems like the answer to that is that there's not. The companies that are willing to spend it are these gambling companies. And if that's the case, then what is the PDC going to do? Be different than every other company in the world? No, I wouldn't expect them to. So I'm not happy that it's another gambling company. And again, this is nothing about Paddy Power specifically. It's about any gambling company sponsoring it. So I'm not happy, but I understand it. It's a rational business decision, and possibly the only rational business decision the PDC had. If there were other companies available that were willing to meet the PDC's needs, then maybe I would go differently. And obviously, we don't know. We don't know everyone who contacted the PDC. But being that, one, the PDC has been trying to move in a different direction, and two, that just didn't seem to work, my guess is that it was just Paddy Power and other gambling companies. So it is what it is.